Good morning. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Alf Tate, President of the Charleswood Legion Branch 100. Before formal ceremonies get underway at 10:30, we are going to show 3 videos to offset the appropriate mood. The first is The Boys of Valor Road, written by 15-year-old Voc Tech student Heidi Wright to honor the 3 Victoria Cross winners from World War I who came from the same street, Pine Street, since renamed Valor Road. The second is an animated video called Mynarski's Death Plummet. This animated video has won numerous awards, including the Toronto International Film Festival and the Sundance Film Festival. It portrays the final moments of the Victoria Cross recipient Andrew Mynarski from Winnipeg, whose plane, while returning from a bombing mission, was hit by anti-aircraft fire and caught fire. Mynarski ordered his crew to parachute to safety. The tail gunner was unable to escape from the bubble. Mynarski made several attempts to free him until the tail gunner told him to save himself. Before he too perished, Mynarski finally jumped he jumped, but his parachute caught fire, and he plummeted to his death. The plane crashed, but miraculously, the tail gunner rolled free and lived to tell this terrible tale. The third video is produced by Veterans Affairs Canada and tells the story of D-Day by the men and women who lived through it. Thank you.
Out of the blue, November rain. I was thinking aloud and what I might say. I was hanging on a wire, holding back a deep desire to express myself in your uncertain way. 3 brave men walk on day. Took their last taste of freedom for going away. They whispered to their mothers, their fathers, and their brothers. To their sisters, they'd be back one day. This is a story about the boys of Valor Road. Gave their lives for you and me, so I'm singing this song. They had colors deep inside for which we have no names. These colors and their courage are one and the same. 3 brave soldiers left one day on a destroyer drifting across the bay. Through all the bullets and the fire, caught the neat barbed wire, refusing to unravel with the fray. This is a story about the boys of Valor Road. Gave their lives for you and me, so I'm singing this song. They had colors deep inside for which we have no names. These colors and their courage are one and the same. Souls heroes one day distinguish themselves in extraordinary ways. Upon their wings they're soaring, while we all stand in mourning and remember them in no uncertain way. This is a story about the boys of Valor. Gave their lives for you and me, so I'm singing this song. They had colors deep inside for which we have no names. These colors and their courage are one and the same.
When you're 19 or 20 or 21, you know that you believe that you're invincible.
We have been warned quite extensively that we would suffer some pretty horrendous casualties.
When we got ready for the D-Day, we were given photographs of where we would land and where we had to, as soon as we landed, which way to go.
We were issued French francs. Our pay books were taken away from us. We were just left with our identification discs, which of course in those days there was 3 of them. One was fireproof, the other was for the Graves Commission, and the other one was if you were shot and killed or blown up, your buddies would take off your tag and leave one in your mouth so that the Graves Commission would come along and know who you were.
We were getting on ship, and I was here, and he was way down farther, but I saw him, and I waved at him, and he waved back, and he said, "Goodbye, John." And he's the first guy I saw dead on the beach.
The
channel with solid with ships. So you could almost walk across on it.
It was marked out where the landing ships supposed to go, you see. And the other battleships, it was marked out for them to drop anchor and use their big guns. So everything was pretty well pre-planned.
The mines would better go first, clear all the mines so that the other landing craft, the assault boats, and the ships that were coming in would be able to go into the beachhead without getting too much trouble.
People just cleaning their rifles, checking out the valence and the knives and make sure everything is working order and your equipment all good.
We were landlubbers, and everybody was sick on that LCI. And the LCI is a small boat. But the barge was just buckling, bending, creaking, groaning. And everything was soaking wet, water coming over the sides.
And we then got to the point you didn't give a darn where you were. You just wanted to get on shore, get off this thing.
You could see them looking down that they were dropping their gliders right across the enemy lines, and of course they're just mowing them down.
A D-Day, we landed right in the middle of the enemy. When I was coming down with the chute, I could hear the guns going off.
They weren't interested in us as much as they were the ships that were behind us, the big ones. That's what they wanted.
And the first time, they wham! I looked and here the ship broke right in two, and the whole stern end of it, right straight up.
From the big landing ships, you go into small harbor ships, the landing craft, the small ones with that rope ladder down the side of the ship.
It's kind of a rough deal. One man got crushed right between the ship and the landing craft as we were trying to get in.
Practically all our boats got blown up or had to go back because of so much mines. But I remember on our boat that one of the guys got right up on the front of it and put his foot on one of those mines and pushed it back, or else we'd have been blown up too.
And then we got hit on the ramp, and it welded the ramp shut on one corner, on one side. But the tank was the first vehicle to go off, and he hit the ramp. They loosened the cables, and he hit the ramp, and broke it free, and it just dropped down, and away it went off.
I watched the first SP go off, and I waited to see if the front end would raise up. It did, and it floated ashore. And every one of our barge got ashore fine.
Landing craft beside us got a direct hit, and of course they lost a lot of their troops right there. She was burned just like to a shell.
If they didn't get off, you pushed them off. And I didn't have to do it. Those fellows up front had to, or their own people had to. It's kind of sad. And a lot of them never made it to the beach.
Some of the water was too deep. The guys just went under, we couldn't come up. Not with 65 pounds of weight. And some of them more than that, especially a man carrying a Bren gun and all his ammunition and everything, probably carrying over well over 100 pounds.
It kept it away. There was something here, for goodness sake. I'm some towards shoulder. You had a weight and you had a machine Bren gun or a rifle, you had to hold it and waved it, But that boat went up on that sand and just glided up there just like nothing. Never enjoyed it. I got 1 foot right for ashore. And the first thing you saw was body floating in up there on the way. It was over the beach there.
They were brave men. If there's any such a thing as a hero in D-Day, it was the first assault troops that went ashore.
My tank on my right was right next to me, with both together. He hit a mine on his right boogie.
But as soon as I found out that we were on the beach, they started shelling us. So we moved pretty fast.
Well, one more hit the first gun of every troop. Of course, the load of the ammunition right away, swoosh. So there's foil tanks finally got in. We got those flails going, and they were blowing mines up by the thousands all over the beach, and that was clearing room for us to get in.
The Germans had a big barricade up there, they had a bulkhead, and they had a machine gun, they had a bunker. And just as soon as they come off the beach, they could pick them off and slaughter them.
Then when we turned to go in, I was near the shop at an my friend. He was killed there. But there was wounded everywhere and screaming and hollering. People in the water floating and everything.
When you're dying, at least these guys are dying. That's what they said. You know, mama, mama.
Our job was to walk ahead of the convoy and move any dead bodies we might run over. That was my first view of war.
You depend on each other, and if that dependency wasn't there, you'd be hopelessly lost right from the start.
The lance corporal of our brand group, he stopped me. I was in a path right in front of me, a mine. He saved me.
After we got so far in past these positions that were knocked out, we were told to dig in. And then another company come behind and passed through us, and they carried on the battle.
We just went as fast as we could up the road and got to the bridge, found the place, the little village, and took it, and we got into a firefight.
But then when we finally get in, get on the tanks, we just bypass them. We didn't stop for nothing. A couple times come on the heavy artillery fire.
You hear the bombs, you hear the hiss of the bullets, the shotguns, that goes hip, hip. You never know. Nobody knows when you're going to be hit, but the one that's going to get you, you won't hit.
I was going up the road, and this chap waved, and I thought, that's friendly, isn't it? And I waved back, and he wasn't going to be friendly. He was telling me, stop. It's just a little ways up the road to Jerry's where you see.
She had a handful of roses. She threw it at the tank, and one fell in the turret. I picked it up, and I put it on the gun mount, and it was there when we lost it.
We moved up from there up to just outside of Banville, set our guns up. And we were there, that's the farthest point inland anybody got that night. We were 7 miles in.
We had not one patient. 1,200 empty beds with hot water bottles in them. After I spoke with this man, I looked out the window. You could not see the end of the ambulances. Every bed was filled. 1,200 beds. Isn't that something?
Isn't that a terrible thing to hold somebody in arms? You know, when he's dying.
You can never go to bed at night before thinking, guys died. They're the one who saved my life. They're the one who won the war, not me. It's them. They gave their life for the country. Simple.
believe we have a couple of RCMP officers in the audience here. Would they join me on stage, please? They left town. For the purposes of historical accuracy, I happen to have served a year with Pat Brophy, who was the tail gunner in the Lancaster that Minarski was in Seven Islands, Quebec, at a little radar site called Moisey. And the story is inaccurate in that Minarski stood to attention and saluted Pat Brophy before he vacated the airplane with his chute on fire. And Pat Brophy was thrown clear of the Lancaster on impact. And when of course, he was in his flight gear, not in his dress uniform. And when he escaped from the bubble and took his helmet off, his hair came with it. And he was bald as could be from then on. And he was quite a guy in the mess. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Alf Tate, and I'm the president of the Charleswood Legion Branch 100. Remember, please turn off cell phones and wrist alarms, etc. Distinguished guests, comrades, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to our Remembrance Day service. This year marks some important anniversaries in Canadian history. 75 years ago, on June 6th, the Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy in the largest operation in history. Every year at the 11th hour of the 11th month, at the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th hour, we remember the signing of the armistice that ended First World War in 1918. We are here to remember those men and women who made the supreme sacrifice on our behalf, who paid with their lives in World Wars I and II, the Korean War, United Nations peacekeeping missions in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq, and many other operations throughout the world. And we must also remember those killed by homegrown terrorists. In addition to the two world wars, Korea and Mideast conflicts, we pay tribute to the men and women of the Canadian forces who served during the Cold War, from the early 50s to the late 90s. This was a time when Canadians served in NATO and North American Air Defense Command, NORAD, in a stand against the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact forces, who were an extremely dangerous threat to democracies everywhere. During this period, many casualties occurred during sea, land, and air operations in preparation for such events as the Cuban Missile Crisis of the early 1960s, in which all American and Canadian forces went to Defense Condition 2, DEFCON 2, one alert level below all-out nuclear war. We must also remember those who returned from war, scarred physically and emotionally from its horrors. We honor the memory of those who fought in World War I and who are now gone, and the dwindling ranks of living veterans of World War II and Korea. And we're honored today to have a World War II vet sitting here with us, Comrade Len Van Ruin, and a Korea veteran, Comrade Don Collins. More than 117,000 Canadian men and women serving in the Canadian and Allied forces have made the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that further generations of Canadians live in a free and democratic country. These courageous individuals are buried in cemeteries in Canada, Europe, Russia, South Africa, North Africa, India, Burma, Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, and many who have no marked graves, and many more were lost at sea. Today we honor all veterans. Often we are quick to send our young men and women off to war, but are too often slow in treating them when they return home broken. We must look after them as they age. We must also ensure that their families and those that have died or were wounded be supported emotionally and financially, not just on November the 11th, but this year, but forever. Please stand to commence this service. Sergeant at Arms, march on the colors. Join me in singing O Canada.
California escort, prepare to deposit Closet. Color. California United Sportsman. Up. East.
I now call upon the chaplain, Monsignor Maurice Garreau, for the prayer of invocation.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to share a prayer that it can be found in the manual for chaplains of the Legion. But I would like to pray these short lines, gathering all of your own intentions that you have at this particular time. Intentions wherever you keep them in your mind, your heart, your soul, but for the people that you are bringing to God's attention as the creator of us all. Almighty God, you have gathered your people together this day in hallowed remembrance. We give you thanks for all who have laid down their lives for our sake, and whom you have gathered from the storm of war in the peace of your presence. Let the memory of their devotion ever be an example to us, that we, at the last, being faithful unto death, may receive with them the crown of life, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Now a hymn from the Charleswood United Church Choir, O God, our help in ages past. Please be seated. Call upon Comrade Kathy Penner for scripture reading.
This morning's reading is from the book of John, chapter 15, verses 9 to 17. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, and your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last. Then the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. This is my command. Love one another.
The president looked at me there, spoke to me, and he says to stand up, but he also said we're going too fast. So I don't know if he's saying speak long. I guess it'll be something out of luck. It's not going to be too long, but hopefully very appropriate for us gathered here today. First of all, I would like to reconnect with the experience I've had just yesterday because I was at the Jet game. I don't know if anybody were here, we're at the Jet game, but 15,000 and over, we spent a good moment of silence together, deep silence, and whatever was going in our hearts, it was more than just remembering. It was more than just doing some kind of a polite thing to do before the game started, because it was an intense prayer. At least from my perspective, my experiences, it was great to be there. And so to connect with that experience and bring it with our experience here today, as well as the experience I had earlier this morning in my own parish, Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Charleswood. I was celebrating the Eucharist, but those people who were there praying for us who cannot be with us here. And I was wearing this stole, which was given to me by the Legion, which is a very powerful outward sign. So outward signs are very important. Gatherings like this one are very important. And the words remember, because it is more to remembrance than anything else. Also, yesterday at the Jet game, every seat had a little pin on it, which I'm wearing today, which I wouldn't wear hadn't been there. But it makes us, it has in this small little symbol, the wanting us to remember not those who gave their lives, at war and never came back home, but those who came back home. And not only that, but we have heard just one line today in the words of the president, those who came back and then they had families. And the families struggle with grief for the rest of their lives. That's what is important to remember today also. Because if you don't process grief, as you know, it'll come out in all kinds of ways, and especially those who are in serious combat situations, their memories bring them, an anger that comes out. It comes out not because of their experience so much, but now the experience of grief that they can't control, and it affects the whole family. Now I'm speaking by experience now, because I come from a family. So my uncles went to war, and a few years back, I shared this story, a little bit like Minarski's story here. My uncle, he was in charge of a group, and I don't know what the name they do in the army he has for that, but then one of his men got shot, couldn't come back to the foxhole, so he got up and brought him back, and on the way back got shot himself, never made it, he died in foxhole. But who's going to tell us how do you experience that? Eventually, the government acknowledged those people who gave their lives, in some kind of a brave way of doing it. And they named one of the rivers up north the Como River, and I flew over it with my other uncle who came back from war, just to say, well, somehow or other, he was remembering in a very different way than I was. But the one who came back used to tell me, and I didn't understand. I came back very crazy. I was crazy. You understand what I'm saying? I said, well, yeah, crazy. But I didn't know what he meant. And then as the years, 1 year after another, because he never missed a Remembrance Day service, as well as never missed to go to a funeral of one of his veteran friends who came back from war with him. The last funeral I presided at the funeral. He was there, he was over 90 years old. But he had to come. And when he saluted his comrade out of the church, he didn't say a word, but the sign, just that sign, that salute, spoke words. I had tears in my eyes. So when we gathered here together today, when we remember, there's one thing about remembrance, is that it helps us connect, whether you have practiced this in your life or not. If not, it's worthwhile to practice to reconnect with those who are on the other side of death, because they are alive. But they cannot communicate with us the same way as with a body. They have no more bodies. They stayed behind. It's part of the earth. But if we remember them, they are with us in a very special way. They help us understand that we are been created with love, by love, with life, and for life, and it does not end with death. That the death is but just a breath away, and then we have the experience of fullness of love and life. So when we remember today all those services across the land, about those who gave their life, about those who came back, and those who grieved. My grandmother was one of those. Her son, Jules, died. She never saw him come back again. The other one came back, and every chance he had, as soon as he started to work and take some money, there's money to put aside, he flew back to Italy just to go and visit his brother, who was buried there to this day. And those actions help us who never went to war, but somehow or other were affected by their lives, to be more aware and more respectful of who we are and who our neighbors are and who give their lives for us. I was impressed also with the, going back to hockey, I'm going to finish the way I started with the hockey. After the game, comments, someone asked the coach, what about the poppy? Why there's been some talk about wearing poppies. He says, I wear them because I'm not one of those who go to work, with a gun, and I'll never, probably, hopefully never wear one. But in honor of those who have to and give of all who they are and their families supporting them, for us who can enjoy some freedom and some love in life. So my message today, of course, the bottom line, when you remember, it's like, even if you remember just a little bit, and if you connect just a little bit with those who are on the other side of death, a little bit of faith can move mountains. A little bit of prayer. The power of prayer helps us to grow in love and life and the strength to share it with others. Thanks for your listening.
Please stand for United Church Choir hymn, Blowing in the Wind. Please be seated. At this time, I would like to call upon Comrade Carl Hadley Carl Hadley is a longtime member of our branch and the daughter of a Hong Kong veteran, and who is very active in the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association.
Thank you very much. I have the honor to speak to you today about the Hong Kong veterans. They were a Canadian unit comprising of the Winnipeg Grenadiers, the Royal Rifles of Canada, and a brigade unit. They were 1,975 men, women, and dog sent to support the British colony of Hong Kong in October 1941, bringing the Allied numbers of the colony to about 12,000 troops against 50,000 of the enemy. The Canadian group was called Sea Force. C did not mean Canadian, but C grade of training. Therefore, they went into battle without complete uniforms, training, weapons, ammunition, artillery, and transportation. Hong Kong was attacked on December 8, 1941, just a few hours difference from Pearl Harbor on the other side of the dateline. The Allies fought a short but brutal battle that lasted 2.5 weeks from December 8th to December 25th, when the governor of the British colony surrendered. For nearly 4 years, Canadian and Allied prisoners of war endured untold deprivation, suffering from severe malnutrition and disease as medicine and food was withheld, and they were forced to work as slave laborers in shipyards and mines, as most of the enemy population were active in fighting. Even though they were captive, they took several opportunities to sabotage their work to hinder the war effort. Approximately 290 Canadian soldiers were killed in battle, and another 267 died as prisoners of war in the Japanese prisoner of war camps. Over half the Canadians who went to Hong Kong were either killed or wounded. They were the first Canadian Army troops to go into the battle in World War II. The first World War II casualties of the Canadian Army were Corporal Rutledge and Signalman Fairley, the Royal Canadian Signal Corps. Corporal Rutledge was from Brandon. Signalman Fairley was from Port Alberni, British Columbia. The first Canadian to be killed in action was Private John Gray of the Winnipeg Grenadiers, aged 21, from Langruz, Manitoba. He was killed on December 13th. On December 19th, Warrant Officer Second Class John Osborne of the Winnipeg Grenadiers was the first Canadian in World War II to receive the Victoria Cross posthumously. There were 2 Canadian nursing sisters, Lieutenants May Waters of St. Vital and Kay Christie from Toronto, who were the only female armed forces to be POWs. Sergeant Gander, the mascot of the Royal Rifles, was a Newfoundland dog that received the Dickon Medal, which is the Victoria Cross equivalent for animals. He received this posthumously for bravery, for grabbing a grenade and running away from his men, thus saving them when it exploded. This is the only Canadian known animal that has been distinguished for this act. Death rates of Sea Force prisoners of war were approximately 25%, compared to 2% for German prisoners of war. The difference was attributed to forced labor treatment, mistreatment by the enemy, lack of food, clothing, medical aid, and inadequate living conditions. They were prisoners of war for 3 years and 10 months, longer than any other Canadians. They were the last prisoners of war to be released from captivity, and only after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, causing the surrender in August 15, 1945. The duration, condition, and treatment of these Canadian prisoners of war was horrific, to say the least, but it was with courage and fortitude that many survived, only to come home and continue to fight for pensions and benefits for the damage done to their physical and mental beings. Over the years, these veterans continually offered mutual support and comfort to their fellow POWs, and to do this, they formed the Hong Kong Veterans Association, which is recognized by Veterans Affairs Canada, as they had no experience with soldiers with these health issues.
Additionally, Hong Kong vets strove to educate the youth of the day on the horrors and futility of armed conflict. The Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association was founded in 1995 by some of the children and family members of the Hong Kong veterans to carry on the work that their parents had started in 1946. The association's objective is to preserve the memory of the Hong Kong veterans and publicize their sacrifices through education of Canada's youth. Seaforth Memorial Wall lists all the names of Seaforth and is a lasting tribute for Canadians to see. It is in an Ottawa park on the corner of King Edward Street and Sussex Drive. We feel this site gives the memorial wall a high profile for the many visitors to our nation's capital, while also providing a peaceful and serene setting for family and friends. Our website, www.hkvca, has a wealth of information about the Hong Kong veterans with contributions from the veterans, family, friends, and various media. Next year marks the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, and we have a commemorative plaque that we're placing in various facilities across Canada. And on December the 8th of this year, we will be doing one in Charleswood Legion. On behalf of George Peterson, our last Winnipeg Grenadier Hong Kong vet in Manitoba, and the members of our Prairie region, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about these special Canadians who served in the Battle of Hong Kong in 1941 to 45. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Comrade Hadley, and for your organization that perpetuates the memory of the Hong Kong vets. Escort colors come to attention. During the silence, we will remember all of our fallen comrades. Trumpeter, last post.
Color party and escort. Outside! Cut! Color party, prepare to recover. Recover! Color. Please stand.
Please be seated. Let us remember those comrades from our branch that have passed away since our last Remembrance Day service. Comrade Stan Manga, Comrade Clifford Tessier, Comrade Wally Steiner, Comrade Olive Stewart, Comrade Jennifer Eden, Comrade Mary Ellen Richards, Comrade Linda Hardy, Comrade Antonia Fosters, Comrade Elliot Lee, Comrade Ronald Alexander Pruden, Comrade David G. Moran, Comrade Deborah Rogers, Comrade Joan Retty, and Comrade Rita Green. Please stand. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will please be seated. I now call upon
Party and escort. Peace. Thank you.
Comrade Phil Otis.
Good morning, all. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, Warrant Officer Todd Simpson. He grew up in a small town in northern Ontario, approximately 30 minutes north of Sudbury, called Dowling. with 2 brothers and a sister, and his parents still reside there. His military career started in 1997. After basic training in Saint-Jean, Quebec, he was transferred to Winnipeg, Manitoba to be part of the 2nd Battalion, PPCLI, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. And from September 2000 to April 2001, his battalion was sent on a peacekeeping mission to Bosnia-Herzegovina. From January to August of 2002, he was deployed on as a peacekeeper to Afghanistan. And when I read those words, I thought he may take issue using the word peacekeeper and Afghanistan in the same sentence. After returning to Canada, Warrant Officer Simser transferred to the Air Force as an aircraft systems technician and completed his training at 435 Squadron, Manitoba, working on the CC-130 Hercules and trades training at CFB Borden. On completion of his training in December 2003, he was posted to 442 Transport and Rescue Squadron, Comox, BC, on beautiful Vancouver Island, where he worked on the CC-115 Buffalo. In August 2013, he was posted to Winnipeg, Manitoba, and 402 Squadron as a sergeant, where he worked on the C-142-8 aircraft. In August of 2016, he was promoted to warrant officer and posted to 1 Canadian Air Division, 1 CAD, where he worked within the Air Maintenance Standards section on maintenance policy and standards. In July of 2018, he was posted back to 402 Squadron, where he currently works as the Senior Aircraft Maintenance Superintendent, making sure the squadron personnel have all the required qualifications to complete maintenance on the Dash 8 aircraft. After more than a 20-year military career serving in 2 different branches of the Canadian Forces, he brings a wealth of experience to us today. We have asked Warrant Officer Simser to share some of his experiences and his thoughts concerning Remembrance Day. Warrant Officer Simser.
Good morning, everybody. First off, I'd like to personally thank all the veterans here today. Thank you for your service. Thank you for inviting me here to speak today for the 2019 Remembrance Day. My name is Warrant Officer Todd Simser, and I'm honored to be here today. I'd like to take a few minutes today to tell you a little of my military experiences and why Remembrance Day means so much to me. But today is the day that we honor and thank all the veterans here who have paid the ultimate sacrifice in our defense of freedom. I'm proud to serve as a regular force member at 402 Squadron, 17 Wing, Winnipeg. On a normal day, I'm usually ensuring all the members of my unit have the required qualifications and training in order to maintain and repair the Dash 8 aircraft. But for today, I have the special honor of speaking to all the people today on the remarkable sacrifices our military members have made for the world, Canada, each other, and for all of us. There is no greater sacrifice than someone risking their life for ours. Our veterans have done that, and all of us who serve here today are inspired by their example and make the same commitment towards freedom and peace for all. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the Allied D-Day landing operations on the beaches of Normandy during World War II. And it is important that we remember their stories of courage and selflessness, because our veterans have made it possible the freedom and peace that we enjoy every day. Started my military career as an infantry soldier with the 2nd Battalion, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, based out of here in Winnipeg. During my time there, I completed 2 overseas deployments. First one was to Bosnia-Herzegovina, where we carried out peacekeeping operations, and for the first time in real life, it allowed me to directly see the outcome of a country after the effects of war. My second deployment was to Afghanistan in January of 2002, right after the attacks of September 11th in New York. This deployment was not the same role as the peacekeeping deployment in Bosnia. We were there as a part of the 3rd Battalion battle group, where we participated in many operations in order to provide a stabilization force. After my deployments, I decided to transfer to the Royal Canadian Air Force, and I became an aircraft mechanic, where I have worked on multiple aircrafts. During my 2 deployments, I've seen a lot of the world, and I can say that I've literally traveled around the world. I went west from Winnipeg on my way to Afghanistan, and I kept going west on my return home. I have met many people from various locations with multiple backgrounds, cultures, languages, where some of them had very little, living out of half-blown buildings, while others were just happy that we were there to do our part at the moment. The biggest thing that all my military traveling has shown me is how special our country is and the freedoms that we have. Thanks to the men and women who were willing to sacrifice everything in order for us to enjoy all that we take for granted every day. Most of us here either have a family member, friends, or know a veteran who put their life on the line for us. We military members are today follow in their footsteps and ensure that their sacrifices are not in vain by continuing to do our part for freedom. I'd like to tell you about a experience I had a couple years ago during a military / Deer Lodge Center event. I had the pleasure of meeting a Korea War veteran from Winnipeg. I can't recall his name, but I do remember that he was artillery because he told me about 12 times. I will remember him because he talked very loud and was partially deaf due to the fact that he shot large artillery guns for years and in war. His wife was there as well that day and was a very nice lady who told me about his job in the military and where he was deployed throughout the years. While I was talking with the couple, our transportation back to the base was getting ready to depart. The couple asked if I had to leave at that moment because they were having a good conversation with me and weren't quite or complete telling me everything that he did. They understood if I had to leave. I told the couple that I would be back in a minute because I had to inform my chain of command that I would take other transportation back to the base and they can just leave without me, even though we don't leave anyone behind. I turned around, stayed at Deer Lodge for the next few hours after the event, and I talked not only to the couple, but to other veterans as well, where they told me what they did in the service, told me some hilarious stories about their friends, some who never came home, chatted about what they did after the war, and gave me some advice on life, and told me not to waste 1 minute because life is too short. So enjoy what we have and love true. I will cherish my memories of all of them and feel honored that they were comfortable enough with me to share a few of their stories and the advice I took to heart. I will always remember something a friend of mine told me while we were in Afghanistan. He said, "Todd, we're here in Afghanistan to do our small part, and we will do it the best we can because we have to. When it's all said and done, we will know in our hearts and feel proud that we supported a greater cause of peace." His name was Corporal Ainsworth Dyer, and sadly he was killed during my tour in Afghanistan 2002. Every year, military personnel serving and retired stand with thousands of other Canadians around the nation at Remembrance Day ceremonies like this to remember our veterans and all of those who have paid the ultimate or sacrifice towards freedom. So, or today, Remembrance Day, and in the future, when you see a veteran, tell him thank you and that you appreciate everything he did so we can live free. Just a few small words like this will put a smile on a veteran's face and show them that we will always remember. So thank you again for having me here as a part of your Remembrance Day ceremonies. Have a great day. Remember, and lest we forget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Todd, and thank you for your service. I've had several people in the Legion comment on, when they read your biography, that you did make the right move by going from the Army to the Air Force. So before we get on to laying the wreath, could somebody crack the doors a little bit? Apparently it's, some people are in the hot seat, they're finding it warm up here. You can open the doors at the back, maybe. Okay, laying of wreaths. Would the wreath layers and the escorts gather at the assembly area at the back of the center aisle? On behalf of the federal government, the Honorable Marty Morantz, Federal Member of Parliament for Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, and Headingley, escorted by Comrade Phil Otis. On behalf of the province of Manitoba, the Honorable Myrna Dreger, MLA for Charleswood, escorted by Comrade Bill Brown. On behalf of the City of Winnipeg, Councillor Kevin Klein, escorted by Comrade Spencer Eddy. On behalf of 17 Wing Winnipeg, Major Sean Webb, escorted by Master Warrant Officer Kevin Pugh. On behalf of the Afghanistan veterans, Sergeant Paul Pena, escorted by Sergeant Todd Young. Mr. Harry Lee from the Republic of Korea sends his regrets. There was a family emergency, but we will lay a wreath on behalf of the people of the Republic of Korea. Comrade Spencer Eddy, escorted by Comrade Phil Otis. Or Comrade Phil Otis. On behalf of the Hong Kong veterans, Comrade Carl Hadley, Prairie Regional Director of the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association, escorted by Comrade Al Hadley. On behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion, Comrade Phil Otis, escorted by Comrade Mike Pearl. On behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 100 Ladies Auxiliary, Comrade Diane Pickering, escorted by Comrade Carl Hadley. On behalf of the PPCLI Association, Comrade Stefan Regis, escorted by Comrade Spencer Eddy. On behalf of the Corps of Commissionaires, Mr. Bob Kamara, escorted by Comrade Phil Otis. On behalf of the 191 Air Cadet Squadron, Warrant Officer Second Class Danielle Braun, escorted by Flight Corporal Thomas Oak. On behalf of the 49th Scouts of Canada, Scout Mariana Priara, I can't say it. And our escort is Beaver McDonald. Okay. On behalf of the 60th Winnipeg Scout Troop, Emily Burton, escorted by Eric Taylor. Okay, this next presentation was written by and sung by Mr. J.P. Cormier. It gives some insight into the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, better known as PTSD, and how it affects many of our veterans, their families, and loved ones.
He got home from the service as the spring began its turn. 12 long months away. He folded up his uniform with the medals tucked inside. Started living for today. But the present could not find him, nor could his wife and kids. He was there, but he was gone. And soon his only comfort was a bottle and his gun. Something right that went so wrong. And the silence keeps on coming as the movie plays again. You can smell that little dust and death hanging on the wind. And we thought the war was over, but the headlines do reveal that another soldier died today on the hometown battlefield. He sits outside the courthouse with his pant legs tucked away, and no one knows his name. One wrong step there in the sand put him where he is today. One more just the same. All his memories live there in the space below his knees. Back when he was whole. But that IED didn't just relieve him on his legs. It grew apart his soul. And the silence keeps on coming as the movie plays again. You can smell the real dust and death flying on the wind. And you thought the war was over, but the headlines do reveal that another soldier died today on the hometown battlefield. If you're wearing loafers, you ain't walked the burning sands. You ain't never had to shoot another living man. It don't matter if we won, it don't matter if we lost. They were following their orders, no matter the cost. So I remember what they've given when I see my flag unfurled, free against the sky. And the way we seem to lose them when they get back to the world. Can someone tell me why? Like the sun keeps on coming as the rain lays again. Against snow and yellow dust and death playing on the wind. We thought the war was over, but the headlines do reveal that another soldier died today on the Hearttown battlefield. Yes, we pray the war is over, but the headlines do reveal that another soldier died today on the hometown battlefield.
We have now arrived at a time of prayer of thanksgiving and benediction. We join in thanking you, O God, for this land in which we live, the blessings of which we often take for granted. Open our eyes to see and appreciate the price that was paid for it. Let us never assume that we can have anything for nothing, but sustained by our faith in your goodness, may hope with sure confidence that we may play our part without hesitation and share in the glory you have prepared for those who are faithful unto death. And may the benediction or the blessing be one of love and life that comes down upon our gathering here today, a little bit like the dew fall, so that we'll be refreshed with love and life and have the courage to pass that love and life to those we will meet on this day, but also in the rest of the days of our journey of life, till it blossom into the fullness of love and life for eternity. Amen.
Party and escort outside. Cut. Party, recover. Recover. Recover.
Please join in the singing of the Royal Anthem. Please be seated. Formal service. Sergeant at Arms, march off the colors.
Color party and escort outwards. March. At the short, every color.
Now please be seated. Formal service has now concluded. However, I would like to acknowledge and thank all those who made this service possible. First, a special thank you to our distinguished guests who have once again honored us with your presence. We thank Monsignor Maurice Comeau, our chaplain, for being with us today. All members of the Chartered United Church Choir, Director Sharon Gordon, and pianist Nick Stroud. I would like to thank the wing commander of 17 Wing, Colonel Eric Charon, for providing the armed forces escorts. I would like to thank all of our branch members for their participation. I thank the RCMP veterans for their participation today. Thank you to our comrade Tom Crew, who provided the background music and audiovisual presentations. Thank you to Captain David McDonald and members of the 191 Air Cadet Squadron. Thank you to the Scouts and Beaver Scouts. Thank you to our piper, Maureen McFarland. Thank you to our trumpeter, Mr. Daniel Whitaker. A special thanks to the Pembina Trails School Division and those personnel, Michelle Lawrence and all staff at Oak Park High School, for their assistance and the use of their facilities today. There will be a light lunch served and refreshments served downstairs in the tank room at the branch. Luncheon will commence at 12 noon. If anyone requires assistance in entering the tank room, please proceed to the west parking lot entrance. The stairs are shorter and there is a wheelchair access lift. Once again, thank you all for your attendance today, and we invite you to enjoy the hospitality of our Legion. We will remember them. That's it.